Hi, once again welcome back to Obstetrics and Gynecology videos. Today we are going to see about an important condition, that is antepartum hemorrhage. Bleeding from or into the genital tract occurring from 24th week of pregnancy and prior to the birth of the baby, or we can call it as third trimester bleeding, that is known as the antepartum hemorrhage. That is, if the bleeding is occurring after 24th week of pregnancy, we are considering it as antepartum hemorrhage. And this antepartum hemorrhage complicates 3 to 5% of the pregnancies, and it's a leading cause of perinatal and maternal mortality rate worldwide. And this may produce a poor placental function, intrauterine growth retardation, and premature delivery also. Now let us see the causes of antepartum hemorrhage. The causes can be divided into three: placental causes, extraplacental causes, and unexplained causes. The 70% of the causes are placental, and unexplained causes are 20%, and extraplacental causes are 5%. And in the 70% of the placental causes, mainly two reasons are there, that is placenta previa and abruptio placenta. And 20% already I have told you that without any proper explanation or without any proper reason, sometimes all of a sudden bleeding will occur. And the last one is extraplacental causes. It may be due to the local cervico-vaginal lesions, or maybe due to the cervical polyp or carcinoma of the cervix, varicose vein, or maybe due to the local trauma. The causes of bleeding in the second half of pregnancy may be due to the hemorrhoid, or it may be from the varicose vein, or it may be due to the tear or lacerations of the vagina or cervix, or it may be due to the polyps, or it may be due to the ectropion. Sometimes fragile glandular tissue may be there in the reproductive tract. Severe cervicitis may produce a bleeding. CS cervix, that is carcinoma of the cervix, may produce a bleeding, and the intrauterine factors like uterine rupture, placenta previa, placental abruption, placenta accreta, placenta increta, and placenta percreta or vasa previa. These are the common causes that may produce bleeding in the second half of the pregnancy. Already we have seen that antepartum hemorrhage is mainly occurring due to the placental causes, and in the placental causes the main two reasons are placenta previa and abruptio placenta. And in this video mainly we are going to discuss about the placenta previa. When the placenta is implanted partially or completely over the lower uterine segment, or in the lower uterine segment, we are calling it as placenta previa. Sometimes this placenta may be lying over the internal os of the cervix, or sometimes it may be lying adjacent to the internal os of the cervix. In both cases, we are considering it as the placenta previa. The normal placenta, in the figure you can see, it will be attached to the uterine fundus, or it will be in the upper segment of the uterus. But in the case of placenta previa, instead of getting attached to the upper segment or upper pole of the uterus, it will get attached to the lower segment of the uterus, and it will be lying near to the internal os of the cervix. Or sometimes it may be lying over the internal os of the cervix. About 75% of the women with placenta previa will have at least one episode of bleeding. On average, this episode occurs at around 29th to 30th week of gestation. The causes of placenta previa we are going to discuss now. Actually, the exact cause of placenta previa is unknown. Certain theories are telling or trying to explain the causes of placenta previa that we are going to see now. First one is dropping down theory. That is, the fertilized ovum, instead of getting attached to the upper pole of the uterus, it will drop down into the lower segment and it will get implanted over there. That is the first theory. And second thing is persistence of chorionic activity. That is, in the placental development, already we have seen the Decidua capsularis, Decidua basalis, and Decidua parietalis. The portion where the placenta is getting attached, that is this portion. This is a normal placenta. It is attached at the upper pole of the uterus or over the uterine fundus. So this portion where the fetus is getting implanted, or the endometrium below this portion, is known as the Decidua basalis, or the base. And the part of the decidua which is covering the baby, this is known as the Decidua capsularis. Actually, decidua means it is the endometrium during pregnancy, and the balance, this entire portion is endometrium only, and this endometrium is known as Decidua vera, or Decidua basalis, capsularis, and parietalis, or Decidua vera. So persistence of chorionic activity means this Decidua capsularis, this portion also will form the placenta. That is, in the placental development, already we have seen the villi-like projections will develop all over this chorion or all over this area. But later, when the placenta is getting developed, from these portions, these villi-like projections will get shed off, and only these villi will start to grow, and it will grow into the endometrium of the uterus. This we have seen already in the placental development. In case if you are having any doubt, you just see the previous video about the placental development. So this portion will become free of placenta. But here, in the case of persistence of chorionic activity, what will happen means this villi-like projections will develop from here also, and this also will start to develop as the placenta. That is one reason. And next one is defective decidua. That is, if there is a defect in the endometrium, that results in the spreading of the chorionic villi over a wide area of the uterine wall in order to get the proper nourishment. So this endometrium, if it is defective, that also may leads to the spread of the placenta. And another reason is big surface area of the placenta. That is, if a large placenta is there, commonly you can see in the case of twin pregnancy. See here, the placenta is attached over here, and if the surface area of the placenta is large, sometimes it may extend even up to here. So that is the last theory which is trying to explain the cause of placenta previa. Now we can see the risk factors for the development of the placenta previa: increased maternal age above 35 years, multiparity, previous history of placenta previa. That is, the ladies those who are having the previous history, they are having 4 to 8% of chances of recurrence in the next pregnancy or in the subsequent pregnancy. History of previous cesarean section or any other scar in the uterus. So sometimes the placenta may develop into this scar area. And history of previous curettage, size of the placenta, that is placental size and abnormality of the placenta. Already I have told you that if the large surface area of the placenta or large size of the placenta is there, means sometimes it may come to the lower segment of also. And another one is placental abnormality, that is saxonrate lobe of placenta. If one lobe is there, one additional lobe is there, and if that lobe is away from the main placenta, that we are calling as the saxonrate lobe of placenta. So this saxonrate lobe may come to the lower segment of the placenta. All the other main placenta may be located in the upper segment, but the saxonrate lobe, or the lobe which is away from the main placenta, may come to the lower segment. And another reason is smoking history of the or smoking habit of the mother. So these are the risk factors for the development of the placenta previa. Now we can see the types of placenta previa or classification of the placenta previa. It is mainly classified into 4 types: type 1, type 2, type 3 and type 4. And otherwise it is classified into major degree and mild degree. And one more classification is there, that is marginal, complete and low lying. So first let us see the types. So first one, type 1, is otherwise known as low lying placenta, in that the major part of the placenta is attached to the upper segment of the uterus, and only the lower margin encroaches the lower margin of the placenta, lower segment of the uterus, but it does not come to the internal os of the cervix. That is, majority of the placenta will be in the upper pole of the uterus only. It will be here only, but only a small portion of the placenta will come to the lower segment of the uterus. But even that small portion is also not getting extended up to the, it is not, in this picture you can see that it is coming, this is the internal os, and this placenta is coming up to the level of the internal os. But in the case of lower lying, it may come to the lower segment, but it will not come to the level of the internal os. And next one is type 2 or marginal, in that the placenta reaches the margin of the internal os, but does not cover it. See here, it has reached up to the internal os, but it will not cover the internal os completely, and this is otherwise known as marginal placenta previa. And next classification is type 3, it is otherwise known as incomplete or partial central. That is, the placenta covers the internal os partially. When the internal os is closed, that is, when the cervix is not dilated, it may close or it may cover the internal os of the cervix, but not entirely. And when the cervix is fully dilated also, it may won't be covering the internal os of the cervix. And the next classification is type 4 or central or total. See, here you can see the complete or central or total one. Here, this is the picture which is showing the type 4. Here, the placenta covers the internal os of the cervix during the pregnancy, and even after the cervical dilatation also, it will be covering the internal os of the cervix completely. And mild degree placenta previa means the first and second degree anterior placenta previa. That is, in the second degree placenta previa, if it is in the anterior portion of the uterus, we are calling it as mild degree. And the major degrees are second degree posterior, third degree, and fourth degree are classified as the major degree. And the second degree posterior is otherwise known as the dangerous placenta previa. Next is partial or low-lying placenta previa. It will often resolve by 32 to 35 weeks of gestation. That is, here you can see the picture of low-lying. That is, stretching and thinning of the lower segment of the uterus will make this placenta away from the internal os. When the lower segment is getting stretched and getting thinned out, or when it is getting dilated, this low-lying placenta will get displaced upward. So these are the main classifications of the placenta previa. Next, we can see the causes of bleeding in the case of placenta previa. The placental growth usually will get slowed down in the later months of the pregnancy, and the lower segment of the uterus will start to dilate. So what will happen means, the supportive structures, these areas are areas of the uterus, that is, this uterine endometrium, actually it is giving support to the placenta, and when this portion is getting dilated, that support of the placenta will not be there, or when this portion is getting dilated, that support will not be there. So the inelastic placenta will get sheared off or will get separated, and the blood vessels may get tear off, and there is a chance for getting bleeding. And however, the separation can be provoked by the trauma. If there is a trauma, or if you are doing the vaginal examination, if you are inserting the fingers, again it may accelerate the process of separation. And the blood is almost always maternal. Actually, the blood is coming from the placenta previa. In the case of placenta previa, will be from the maternal side only, mainly from the maternal side only. Next, we can see the clinical features and symptoms. Only symptom is unprovoked vaginal bleeding. That's the main symptom. And the clinical features of the bleeding is, it will be sudden onset, and it will be painless, and apparently without any cause it will occur, and it will be recurrent also. Even if a slight bleeding is there also, it's a warning hemorrhage, and in second trimester itself sometimes it may come, and it is not having any relation to the activity. That is, even during the sleep also, even if the mother is not doing any activity also, sometimes the bleeding will occur. 50% of the cases of bleeding occurs before 36 weeks, and it is more like and earlier, and is more likely in the case of major degrees of the placenta previa. And in the case of central type, chance for bleeding is less until the labor process is getting started. And if the pain is not there, that is absence of pain is regarded as a distinguished factor of placenta previa, and if pain is there means it's a factor of or it suggests the placental abruption. So the main feature is painless vaginal bleeding, and there won't be any cause for the bleeding also. And the other features are the mother will be having the signs of anemia if the bleeding is severe, and if you're doing the abdominal examination, size of the uterus will be appropriate to the, or it will be proportionate to the gestational age, and the uterus will be relaxed, soft and elastic without any tenderness, and there is a chance for malpresentations, and sometimes twin pregnancy will be there, because we know that in the case of twin pregnancy, large surface area of the placenta will be there. So there is a chance for placenta previa, and the head will be floating in contrast to the gestational age. That is because of the placenta in the lower segment of the uterus, the head will not get fixed or the head will not get engaged, and the fetal heart sound will be present. And vulval inspection, if you are doing the vulval inspection, you can assess the characteristics of the blood, and it will be bright red in color. And actually the per-vaginal examination is contraindicated outside the operation theater, because when you are doing the per-vaginal examination in the case of placenta previa, sometimes your fingers may separate the placenta and it may produce severe bleeding, and that may endanger the life of the mother and the baby. So you are supposed to do the per-vaginal examination only inside an operation theater, because if an emergency situation is occurring, you will be having the facility to manage that emergency in the theater. And now we can see the confirmation of the diagnosis. Painless and recurrent vaginal bleeding in the second half of the pregnancy should be considered as placenta previa unless it is proven otherwise. And you can perform the ultrasonography in order to confirm the placenta previa. In the placentography, if you're doing, you can localize the placenta, and the ultrasonography you can do transvaginally, or that is you can do the trans abdominal sonography, or you can do the transvaginal sonography. And in the case of trans abdominal sonography, high accuracy will be there after 30th week, but even in the beginning also, if you are performing the transvaginal sonography, 100% accuracy will be there. And otherwise you can go for the color Doppler flow study. You can assess the flow through the placenta, blood flow through the placenta. Otherwise you can go for the MRI. And the other method for the confirmation of the diagnosis is clinical examination. That is, you can perform the internal examination. You can do the direct visualization by using the speculum, and otherwise during the cesarean time, when you're performing the cesarean, you can observe the placenta will be in the lower segment of the uterus, and you can perform the examination of the placenta after the vaginal delivery. And if you're performing the examination, sometimes you will be able to see a tongue-shaped thin segment of the placental tissue. Sometimes an abnormal attachment of the placental cord also will be there. So these are the things you can do for the confirmation of the placenta previa. So mainly for the confirmation, you can go for the ultrasonography or you can go for the MRI. And the differential diagnosis, it can be mistaken as abruption placenta, or sometimes the bleeding may be from the local cervical lesions, that is maybe from the cervical polyps or from the cea cervix, and sometimes it may be due to the placenta accreta or increta or percreta. If you want to have the detailed explanation of placenta accreta, increta and percreta, you just see the video. Already I have done a separate video about that. And otherwise it may be due to the vasa previa also. Now we can see the management of placenta previa. First one is proper antenatal care. Antenatal diagnosis of the placenta previa should be done earlier. For that you can perform the ultrasonography, and you can repeat the ultrasonography by 34th week in order to confirm the diagnosis, and significance of warning hemorrhage should be ignored. Colored floor Doppler ultrasound to detect the placenta accreta, that also should be done. And if the person is at home, the patient should confine to the bed, and we should assess the blood loss, and it is better to conduct an abdominal examination and vaginal examination also, but should not be done. But abdominal examination should be done, but vaginal examination, especially the vaginal examination, should not be done. Next, transfer to the hospital. You immediately, if bleeding is coming, immediately you should transfer the patient to a hospital with all facilities. That is, there should be the facility for emergency cesarean section, and there should be an neonatal ICU also. And when you're transferring, you can start IV dextrose. And admission in the hospital. All cases of antepartum hemorrhage, even if it is a slight bleeding, or even if the bleeding is getting stopped later also, the person should get admitted in the hospital. And after admitting in the hospital, you should perform the general examination, abdominal examination, and you should perform the inspection of the vulva, not the examination, only the inspection of the vulva. And you should do the clinical assessment in order to identify the amount of blood loss. You should take the blood sample for assessing the hemoglobin, hematocrit, ABO, and RH grouping. Then you should resuscitate. If much blood has lost, you should start the IV line, and you should make arrangements for the transfusion. And you should do the ultrasonography in order to localize the placenta, or in order to locate the placenta. And the management includes expectant treatment and active inference. That is, active inference means if the bleeding is continuing, if the pregnancy is about 37 weeks, or if the patient is in labor, already is in labor, or if the fetal heart sound is absent, or if there is fetal malformations are there. If it is there already, if it is identified, you can go for the induction of the labor, or you can go for the cesarean section. It depends on the situation. If the bleeding is severe and if the baby is alive, immediately you can go for the cesarean. That is active inference. Next is expectant management or expectant treatment. If there is no vaginal bleeding, and if the pregnancy is below 37 weeks, and if the condition of the mother is good, that is, if the hemoglobin is more than 10 gram percentage, and if the hematocrit level is more than 30 percentage, and if the fetal heart rate is good, and if there is no problems with the baby, that is, if the cardiotocography is reactive, in that case you can wait. But even if you are waiting also, you should do the periodic inspection of the vulval parts, and the fetal surveillance also should be assessed every 2 to 3 weeks. And in case if it is needed, you should give the supplementary hematinics, or you can give the transfusions. And if the mother is having uterine contractions, you can give the tocolytics in order to stop the uterine contraction. And you can give dexamethasone in order to ensure the lung maturity of the baby. And if the mother is Rh negative, you can give Rh immunoglobulins also. And after 37 weeks, up to 37 weeks, all these things you will be doing, and you will be preserving the pregnancy. And after 37 weeks, you should do the ultrasonography, and if the placenta, you should locate the placenta, and if the placenta is at the edge, that is, if it is clearly 2 to 3 centimeters away from the internal os, you can do the internal examination in the operation theater, and after that you can do the artificial rupture of the membrane. Then you can start the oxytocin, because the placenta is not lying over the internal os of the cervix. And after the artificial rupture of the membrane, and after giving oxytocin, if the labor is getting progressed, you can wait for the normal vaginal delivery. But if the bleeding continues, and if the labor is not getting progressed, you can go for the cesarean section. But when you're doing the ultrasonography, if the placental edge is within 2 centimeters of internal os, or if it is a placenta previa more than the type 1, you can, in that case, you should not do the internal examination. Immediately you should take the case for the cesarean section. And delivery through the cesarean section birth is a rule unless it occurs early in pregnancy. That is, if the delivery is occurring before 20th week, that is, if it is an abortion, you need to go for the cesarean. Otherwise, in these cases, that is, if the placenta is within 2 centimeter or if the type is more than type 1, you should go for the cesarean section. In a patient whose condition is stable at 36 to 37 weeks of gestation, following the amniocentesis to confirm the legal maturity, if the lung maturity is not demonstrated, the patient should be delivered between 37 to 38 weeks of gestation. Earlier cesarean delivery may be required if bleeding occurs and if the patient goes to the labor process earlier. Otherwise, you will wait till 37 to 38 week, and you will do the cesarean in order to safeguard the life of the baby and the life of the mother. Now we can see the complications of placenta previa. The maternal complications is divided into complications during pregnancy, labor, and puerperium. The complications during pregnancy include antepartum hemorrhage, and if it is severe, that may lead to the shock, and malpresentations, premature labor, and death due to the massive hemorrhage, abnormal placental adhesions to the uterine wall, that is placenta accreta, placenta increta, and placenta perfecta. These conditions also can occur. And during the labor, the complications include premature rupture of the membrane, chance for cord prolapse, slow dilatation of the cervix, intrapartum hemorrhage, chance for operative delivery, chance for postpartum hemorrhage, chance for retention of the placenta, and the risk for sometimes the risk recur the hysterectomy following the cesarean delivery, because if the placenta is in the upper segment of the uterus, or we know that the upper segment of the uterus is contracting and retracting, but the lower segment of the uterus is getting dilated. So what will happen after the placental separation means the lower segment is not contracted, so there is a chance for profuse hemorrhage or postpartum hemorrhage or severe hemorrhage after the separation of the placenta from the lower segment of the uterus. So in that case, sometimes in order to save the life of the mother, you may be supposed to do the hysterectomy. And during the puerperium, there is a chance for infection, there is sepsis, subinvolution of the uterus, and there is a chance for embolism also. The fetal complications include chance for getting low birth weight babies, chance for chronic placental insufficiency, and this may produce intrauterine growth retardation. The baby may get the asphyxia. Sometimes intrauterine fetal death will occur. Sometimes the baby will get the birth injuries, and sometimes the baby will get the congenital malformations also. So these are the main things about the placenta previa. In this video, we have seen what is antepartum hemorrhage, and we have seen a lot of causes are there for the antepartum hemorrhage, and in that the main causes are placenta previa and abruptio placenta. And here we have discussed about the placenta previa. In the next video, we'll be discussing about the abruptio placenta. See you soon with the abruptio placenta. Bye.